All right, so we are back here once again. One of my favorite times of the year, where we'll be previewing the Power Five Conference, our second annual Power Five preview, and we got our guy Zach from the Blue Bloods podcast. What's going on, Zach?
Oh man, not much. Appreciate you having me on, man. Second annual. They gotta make this a recurring thing. We'll have like a fifth annual in the few coming years, man.
Yeah, and Power Five may be
Like a
Power
power
Three, Power
two.
Two, as it progressed. But currently, but hey, we roll with the punches because, like last year, remember how we did a preview? We
Yeah.
did a preview this time last year,
But we every
and then
every
the
time
big
we did a preview
cancel.
last year, they canceled right after. It was like you posted the episode on Saturday, then like Monday or Tuesday, they're like, that one's out too. And I was like, bro, we gotta stop covering these conferences. They're gonna just cancel the whole season.
I know because we did the Pac-12 first, and we did that on a
Hmm.
Saturday, and then they canceled the Big Ten. We were going to do that like a few weeks down the line. They canceled that on a Tuesday, and I was thinking to myself, all right, well, we continue going forward, but we kept on going forward, and we did do the other conferences, and yeah, because at that time, I think when we were, they were supposed to meet that day. Remember, they were supposed to meet that
Hmm.
Sunday, all the other Power Five conferences, and at that time, the thought was they were going to be one solid unit, and was just going to say either we're going to play or we not, and then the Big Ten kind of bolted and did their own thing. So
Yeah, and yeah, they took a lot of criticism on our podcast and a lot of other shows for that. Because I mean, I think the SEC came out and said we left the meeting saying we were going to be united, and
yep.
then all of a sudden they said we're not playing. And I think it was just the Big Ten thinking that they had more power than the SEC, which I don't think, as we're seeing now, we talked about before the show, as we're seeing now, the SEC is running college football right now in terms of from a political and the field standpoint with Alabama winning the national title. So I don't think they should have tried to strong arm the SEC, and it kind of backfired.
Yeah, and like you said, you don't. The thing with SC, you don't want to make them an enemy. we
Oh, no.
as we've as we've learned, I think it's a common sense thing. You don't even have to cover college football to know, or even any athletic capacity to know that SEC is king when it comes
Oh,
to college football. So yeah, man. So we're gonna get it back going here. This year. So we're going to start with the Pac-12 conference once again. You know, we got
oh
definitely
man.
yeah, and so Zach, what is can a Pac-12 team actually make the college football playoff this year?
It's going to be hard, and the only reason I say it's going to be hard is because your top contender has a major question at quarterback, and that's Oregon. Yes, like they rank top probably 15 in every category in running back, wide receivers, offensive line, defense. But their quarterback is a transfer from Boston College who lost the starting job to Tyler Shaw, who transferred out after winning the Pac-12 title. Oddly, like he wins the championship at Oregon, has some more eligibility, and decides to transfer out of nowhere. So a lot of questions in terms of the quarterback play for Oregon. But then you have USC, but as we saw last year, USC doesn't have the same pool that it did in the mid 2000s when Reggie Bush was running through defenses like they were butter, man. And then your other top contender is Arizona State, and I don't know if you guys have been following it. They might not even have a football program because of all the accusations and NCAA rule breaks that they did throughout COVID by bringing recruits during COVID, which led to a COVID outbreak and firing people and lying about it. And so they're out of it because they might have the whole team suspended. And so your two top choices are Oregon and USC. And listen, the Pac-12, the reason they haven't made it, coach, is they can't when they play other conferences, they lose. Until Oregon can go out into the non-conference and beat somebody who's any good in another conference, how do you put them in the playoffs? And same for USC, and they beat up on each other every year. So an Oregon loss to an Arizona State looks a lot worse than an Alabama loss to a Florida, because Florida goes out there and wins their non-conference. So they got some big non-conference games, and so it kind of ties to a topic later that I want to get in, that I know we're going to get into. But until the Pac-12 wins their non-conference, it's going to be real tough to sneak in. But Oregon has a chance because they have a September 11th game at Ohio State. If they can win that and win out and win the Pac-12, the Ducks are automatically in. But outside of that happening, man, it's going to be a really, really tough stretch to fit a Pac-12 team into the college football playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, and it's funny. The next topic I definitely want to discuss. I know one of the games to watch, like you said, the September 11th Ohio State Oregon game is huge for this conference. So other games to watch in the Pac-12.
So of course, Oregon versus Washington is always a big one. UCLA, USC, but really and truly, man, none of these in-conference games really matter that much for the big picture of the the Pac-12, and it's because of the thing I just mentioned. You have to win the non-conference, and so Oregon has to. I get it. If you go to Columbus and you don't beat Ohio State, that's not the end of the world, but you have to be competitive. Being competitive is the number one priority. And then UCLA opens the season with LSU. LSU is coming out to LA in the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. They have to be competitive, and if they win, that's a huge step for the Pac-12. And then Washington playing Michigan in the Big House September 4th is a huge one too. So let's just say Washington beats Michigan, Oregon upsets Ohio State. What is the perception of the Pac-12 then? We're looking at the Pac-12 like, man, they just knocked off two of the biggest Big Ten teams back to back. And then let's say UCLA beats LSU. How big of a win is that for the Pac-12 over the SEC, especially after Auburn in 2019 and 2018 beats your Pac-12 champion and Auburn doesn't finish above third in their division in the SEC West. So these non-conference games are important. And then always, man, USC Notre Dame. If USC wants to reclaim their throne as the face of the Pac-12, the face of the West, and get their names back into the hat for the college football playoff, they're going to have to start beating Notre Dame more consistently. And that's going to be a game to watch, especially on a year where a lot of people think Notre Dame's going to take a huge step back, losing Ian Book, losing a lot of that offensive line. Notre Dame's going to be vulnerable, and a lot of people have a lot of question marks surrounding Notre Dame. So this is the year for USC to make an impact. And when you look at all these games, man, Michigan, how many question marks do they have this year? We don't even know who their quarterback's really going to be. Jim Harbaugh's been on the hot seat for, it feels like, 15 years. And then LSU, 5-5 last year. Coach O could be on the hot seat. Who's their quarterback going to be? And then for Ohio State, this might be the first year that Ohio State doesn't have a surefire answer on the offensive side of the ball. The wide receivers are there, but how much do you believe in C.J. Stroud if he ends up becoming the guy to be the QB1 for that team? So all these non-conference matchups have huge question marks. If the Pac-12 can't take advantage, man, it's going to be a long road for the Pac-12 to kind of earn their spot, at the forefront of college football.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely looking forward to Pac-12 after dark. I don't know if it's going to have a lot of relevance this year, like as you mentioned earlier, but yeah, absolutely. So in this conference, who are the players to watch in this conference?
So, I always try to have like a defensive guy. I always try to have like an offensive guy when I come on the show, man. I can't show too much love to one side of the ball, but my first player is Mikael Wright out of Oregon. He's a cornerback, and when I came on the show last year, I was raving about Oregon's defense, and I was like, man, that's really going to be the reason they might have a chance at the college football playoff. Well, Mikael Wright steps into that DB1 role. He had a rocky 2020, I would say, but he was rated the second best cornerback in the Pac-12 last year. This kid, I would have no doubt, is going to make a run at a 4.3 40 when he comes out in the draft. He's going to have to step up and be the leader because the front of this Oregon defense, man, is huge. You got Kayvon Thibodeau, who might be the best defensive player in college football at defensive end. You got 3 5-star linebackers that you're going to move in. 2 of them who were hurt last year and didn't even play. And then your secondary is kind of a bunch of unknown people because they had Jeff Holland leave. They had so many people leave. So Mikael Wright is someone I'm looking at. And then on the offensive side of the ball, man, Brew McCoy. And so I know a lot of people said, man, that name might sound familiar. He's the wide receiver 5-star who went through like 3 commitments. Like he committed to Texas. Then he committed to USC. Then he like decommitted from USC, went to Texas, left, transferred from Texas back to USC. The kid couldn't make up his mind where he wanted to go to school, but Brew McCoy is going to have to step up. Keaton Slovis needs some help on the outside. That wide receiving core took a huge step back with Micah Pittman leaving, who's now a star at the Indianapolis Colts, and a lot of people are expecting him to break out there. But McCoy's 6'3", 220, man. He runs like a 4.4, and he was 4 for 4 on contested passing opportunities last year. He's got to be that big physical outside wide receiver that USC really needs, because when you look at USC, I don't think a lot of people are confident in like, man, that's the go-to guy. So if Brew McCoy steps up, USC could step up and surprise a lot of people in the Pac-12. But if he doesn't, then I got a lot of questions. And then my last one, just as an honorable mention, he's a transfer. So not a lot of people might remember this guy, but it's Brendan Radley Hiles. And he was you might know him as Buki from Oklahoma, number 44. He had the big afro, and he was so physical, so explosive. He was the heart and soul, and he's just a mean kid. He reminds me of the Tasmanian devil. He will take your head off and not even apologize afterwards. Well, he's now transferred to Washington, who has a little bit of a claim to DBU, if you want to be honest. The new head coach is a DB-friendly guy. They've you look at Elijah Molden in the NFL draft. You look at the long line of DBs that have been in the draft for them. If he can step up and play like he did at Oklahoma and give them a huge boost at the safety / kind of like star role, it's like that 5th DB in that defense, it's going to be huge for Washington. Their defense has to play a little bit better because there's a lot of question marks on that offense with like a new quarterback. There's some questions at running back. They're going to have to hold teams to under probably 20 points a game, and Brendan Radley Hiles is going to be a real key to that.
Absolutely. That's a huge shout out to our guy Andre Jones. Definitely appreciate your comment on that one. Definitely appreciate it. So, we talked about Oregon and talked about the question marks as far as the teams and what have you. So who are like the sleepers, the teams that could kind of shake up the Pac-12 this year?
Man, so I was going to pick Arizona State. And I really want to, but I don't know what that program is going to be, because they can still have everybody fired right before the season based on this NCAA investigation. They have an awesome quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who was one of my breakout players last year. He threw like 2 interceptions his freshman year with like 20 touchdowns. Kid's an absolutely electric. They got some wide receivers. Now, I think they're returning every single player from their 2-deep defensive roster on that team. That's just a wild stat to think about. So they're going to be really good, but I'm going to go with UCLA. Now, this is an odd one, and they have a tough schedule. They have to play week 0 against Hawaii. That's a sneaky game. Hawaii is one of those teams where you're like, oh, it's just Hawaii, and then they beat you. They put up 55 points out of nowhere. You have LSU week 2. That's a sneaky game. That's not even a sneaky game. That's a dangerous game because LSU is returning a lot of talent. And they still have to play Arizona State. They still have to play Washington and Oregon back-to-back. They got to play Utah on the road. They got to play USC, and then they have a sneaky game against Cal to end the season. Their schedule is brutal. But, Pro Football Focus gives them the 3rd best running back unit, 3rd best receiving unit, a top 5 offensive line, a top 5 defensive line. Their questions come at quarterback and in the secondary, but I think their quarterback could be a good candidate for breakout player of the year in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's so electric. He reminds me of a little Michael Vick. He's a lot smaller, maybe like a Kyler Murray. That's a better comparison. He wears number 1. He's very short, stocky, but the kid runs like I don't even know what you want to compare it, like a cheetah, man. When he gets out of the pocket, he's a running back in the open field. And he just has to get more consistent with his throwing. He lacks the deep ball at times, especially outside the numbers. He misses a lot of throws too deep. He overthrows them, gets a little panicky. His footwork gets off. But if he can improve, I think he had a 3.4% big-time throw rate. He needs that to go up to more like 5-6%. And his average depth of target is only 7 yards. I need to see that jump to like 10 to 11. That's what the elite quarterbacks push. You got to throw the ball down the field. A lot of his yards came behind the line of scrimmage this year. If Dorian Thompson-Robinson can become a downfield threat, be more accurate outside the numbers down the field, UCLA could be a very, very scary team, and Chip Kelly could find his way back to the pinnacle of the Pac-12.
Yeah. Huge shout out to Chip Kelly.
Yeah, a lot of people just forget that he's at UCLA.
Yeah, and honestly, if it weren't for All American, I forgot he was there. Into the episode when those guys went to UCLA for a visit, and I'm like, oh yeah, Chip Kelly's still in the still coaching UCLA. So yeah.
And a lot of people forget UCLA almost knocked off USC last year. They were one play away from beating USC, who won their division last year and went to the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah. That'd be huge. Shout out to Off-Script Vids. Let's go.
Shout out to Off-Script. I want to say, go check out his channel. That is the voice of the SWAC right there. That's my guy right there, man. Go check out his channel.
Yeah, we definitely check him out. Definitely huge shout out. Yeah. So Zach, rounding out our Pac-12 preview.
Oh man.
I'm gonna ask you the $1 million question in the Pac-12. Who will win the Pac-12?
So in the South, I'm taking USC to win that division. I think Arizona State was the only school that can realistically compete with them, and I have a lot of question marks about them now. I think Oregon takes the North in a close one. Washington is a very sneaky pick, but I think Oregon gets past because that defense, man, I will pay whatever amount of money to whoever wants to bet me. That defense will be top 15 by the end of the year, like in the country. That defense is going to be disgusting. Kayvon Thibodeau is too good on the defensive line, and Mario Cristobal has built up that offensive line, and they got some dogs on that team. So you got USC versus Oregon rematch from last year, and man, I did it again. You know, I got it right. My prediction was right, even though we had a COVID year last year when I picked the Ducks. I'm rolling with the Ducks again. They three-peat for the Pac-12 championship. This will be their third straight year. They beat Utah 2 years ago, USC last year, and a lot of people don't know they got in last year by default. Washington won the division last year, got COVID, and they put Oregon in their place. And Oregon went with 2 losses. They were like 3-2 and won the Pac-12 title. So how you get it, you get it however you can get it. And I think Oregon wins it outright this year. The defense is too good. I believe in Anthony Brown at quarterback. And if not, they have a 5-star kid behind him in Ty Thompson, who's the highest rated QB recruit in Oregon history, even over Mariota. And listen, man, he's 6'5". And he's like 200 pounds, and he threw for like 12,000 yards at Arizona, down there in Arizona in high school football. That kid is a baller. And listen, I think he's a future Heisman contender. I don't know if he's ready to start right this second, but if Anthony Brown struggles, I think they're going to throw him to the fire, and I believe in that kid wholeheartedly. So look out for Ty Thompson this year, but the Oregon Ducks are going to take the Pac-12 title for the 3rd straight time.
Yeah, so it'd be, just like the previous Marcus Mariota, it'd be Jesus Girls, Anthony Brown, potentially.
Yeah, but Anthony Brown and Ty Thompson. Listen, I've been very vocal for Ty Thompson to start, but you look at Anthony Brown. He started at Boston College for like 2 years. He has over 20 games of experience, and he actually played more than Tyler Shaw, who transferred in the bowl game against Iowa State, which they eventually lost, but they had a lot of players opt out. Oregon's an interesting team, man. Listen, I don't think Mario Cristobal gets enough praise for what he's doing up there at Oregon. They just landed the number 2 offensive tackle in the 2022 class. They have a top 10 recruiting class again. And last year for this class that just got on campus, it was number 6 in the country. Like, Mario Cristobal comes from the Nick Saban lineage. He was the offensive line coach at Bama for years under Saban. He's building a little bit of a small Nick Saban dynasty up there in Eugene. The Oregon Ducks are going to be something serious in the coming years as long as they keep Cristobal. Because I know Auburn came real hard at Cristobal. That was their number 1 option when Auburn had the opening this year. He ended up signing an extension with Oregon. They got him for like 5-6 years. The Oregon Ducks are going to be something serious in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely huge shout out to once again off the script vids. Oh yeah.
Shout out to my
Yeah.
guy, man.
Yes, Zach definitely knows his stuff, man. Definitely does, man. So yeah, man. So this wraps up our Pac-12 preview. So next week we're doing the Big 12. So
Oh
like
man.
we talked about it.
RIP. RIP to the Big 12. This is our listen, this might be our second annual Power 5 preview. It's gonna be the end of the Big 12. Just name the episode RIP Big 12.
Yeah, so definitely next week, stay tuned for the Big 12 because, like you said, this might be the final time that the Big 12 might be constructed at this point. So, for memento's sake, keep keep that as well. So, yeah, man, definitely appreciate you for coming on this week,
Absolutely.
Zach. So, tell them where they can find you, and then some other and then your other project that's going on now for you.
Oh man, I appreciate, man. I'm always down to come on the show, man. It's one of my favorite. It's like one of my favorite appearances. I look forward to this so much. But you can find us on YouTube, the Blue Bloods or the Blue Bloods CFB podcast, Twitter at the __ Blue Bloods, Instagram at the _ Blue Bloods, and you can find us on any and all podcast streaming platforms. We cover everything. Listen, I like to brag. We're the only podcast where you get Power 5, Group of 5, FCS, HBCU. We cover every level of football, man. With the new NIL, we've had some great players on. We just had Eric Barrier, the FCS Player of the Year, quarterback for Eastern Washington on the show, Demetrius Taylor from App State, Akil Glass, Alabama A&M quarterback, man, the best quarterback we have the two best quarterbacks in the FCS on the show, man. So if you like interviews, debates, coverage, live shows, man, check us out on YouTube, man. Subscribe, and I promise you'll get all your football content there.
Yeah. Once again, definitely appreciate you. Yeah, and what you're doing is great. I definitely love what you guys doing. You and Brandon, what you guys doing, and even having me on. I know we did a draft special, and then also we did like a for Carolina, like a game day kind of thing last year. And that's funny.
With the baby blues,
right? And then. It's funny how, and it's so weird. I had a weird feeling about that day, to be honest with you, because like we were 5th ranked. That's the first time I think we was ranked 5th since 1997. So it was like, wow, this is like the pinnacle. And then, went to bed against Florida State. And then, I
remember hitting you up on Twitter after that. I was like, bro, I'll never ask you to be on the show again. I'm sorry. I jinxed the whole season.
No, shoot, I would definitely love to be on there regardless of it. Hey, it was and that was a good thing about it. We were, 5th ranked in the country. That's probably, we're hoping down the road, it's gonna be better times. But at that point, that was the best that it could get at that point. So yeah.
Well, hey, y'all, listen. It's not the ACC preview yet, but y'all are gonna be tough to beat this year, man. Sam Howell is a dog. I like that guy. That's my favorite quarterback in the college football, man. That dude. Listen, Spencer Rattler's all great. Sam Howell's the future, man. That kid can sling it.
Yeah, we'll talk about definitely Spencer Rattler next week in the Big 12, and then we'll do the ACC. I think 2 weeks from the day. So yeah, man, we'll definitely get you guys covered for Power 5 conferences. We'll get you all ready for the upcoming college football season, and definitely appreciate you once again, Zach, for coming on this week. And man, Absolutely. We'll catch you guys next week. We'll be doing the Big 12 for potentially the final time, but we're not sure. But definitely thank everybody for tuning in, commenting, chatting. Definitely huge shout out to Andre Jones and Oscar Vids for being a part of the show as well. So without further ado, man, this has been this Power 5 preview for the Pac-12, and we'll catch you guys next week as we talk about the Big 12.